Hello my quilting friends! Leah Day here with a new video for the Machine Quilting Block Party. Today we're piecing our third block in this series, a Patchwork Tulip. And in order to piece this block, you're gonna need to know how to make half square triangles. So check out the other video we have, a Quilting Basics video on piecing half square triangles first, and follow the instructions in your quilt pattern for block number 3 to make your half square triangles or HSTs first. And now the next step is to start piecing together to create this beautiful block. So let's get started working on the vase. So here are the pieces for our vase. As you can see, I have already gone ahead and made my half square triangles for this unit. So to piece it, we're just going to flip over the half square triangles and we're going to piece it on either side of that center rectangle. And whenever it comes to piecing, I always flip over my unit and I place my pin perpendicular with the seam I'm going to stitch. That's just my guide for myself, because when I get to the machine, I'm not sitting there going, what gets pieced to what? You know, sometimes it can get really confusing. You can flip yourself around. So whatever you do, make sure that you develop some method of pinning so that when you get to the machine, you know exactly which seams to stitch. So we have that on both sides. I'm going to take it to the machine and stitch that together. Now we pinned this just so that we would know which seam to stitch, which side to stitch on, but we really didn't take a lot of time to line up our fabric, so let's do that now. We want to line up those edges real nicely together, make sure, double check that the fabrics are right sides together. Trust me, that can happen. You can get to your machine and everything seems all wonky and off. Another thing that I like to do when I'm working with the half square triangle is I like to make sure that the seams, those extra bulky seams right there, are going to feed into the machine first. So I'm going to flip it around and just take a second here to make sure that these edges are in nice alignment. Just double checking that everything's nicely lined up. And now I'll start stitching them together. So just like our piecing tip video, we have stitched through a scrap charger, and I have lowered my stitch length down to 1.5 millimeters. So that way I'm stitching and locking these together real nice and secure. I'm going to piece this on down. And then I just grab another scrap. This is just a leftover piece from the block. Fold it in half and buzz through it. And that way we can clip it off and flip it over and piece the opposite side. So opposite side works the same way. Flip it around so that way you can piece through those seam allowances first. And then, of course, remember, just to take a little minute here, get everything nicely lined up, so that way those edges are going to be perfectly lined up and they're going to have a nice accurate 1/4 inch seam. At this point you can really see the vase coming together, and the last step is to attach these two fabric D rectangles to both sides. Just flip those over, stitch them on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and your vase unit will be complete. The next step to piece is your stem and leaf section, and as you can see, there are a lot of little pieces here, so be really careful as you cut out these pieces and arrange them like this, so that way you know where everything is. Now this is going to be pieced first with the leaves, and I'm going to piece this together in sets of 3. So I'm going to flip these pieces over and going ahead and pen them. If you remember, my favorite way of penning is to pen with the pen pointing towards the seam I'm going to stitch, so it's perpendicular. And that's really nice to have some sort of method so that whenever you get to the machine, you don't get confused about what is being pieced to what. And it is really important to do this with something like these leaves, because as you can see, this is very directional. If I accidentally stitch the wrong seam, I'm going to end up with something completely not right. So just make sure that you have it all laid out. Then flip the pieces over, give them a pen, and then we'll take them to the machine and stitch them together. So I've lined up my pieces. I'm going to slip them underneath the foot, and I'm making sure to piece through that end that has the seam allowances from the half square triangle first. I just find that that usually goes together just a little bit more accurately if I have that bulky seam allowance going through first. And I'll just go on ahead and grab the other one, and we're going to piece. What I'm doing is I'm stitching on that little rectangle first. Whenever I do that penning, I only pen it just to give myself a guideline. When I'm actually at the machine, I really do take some time to get those pieces in nice alignment, to really double check myself. And only when they're nicely aligned, both on the sides and the top edges, top and bottom edges, do I slip them under the foot and actually start piecing? It's these little habits that really are key to piecing accurately and to having every seam come out matching. And it's just like a little combination of small steps I think really make a big difference. So here is this last piece, and you can always double check yourself, just make sure that that's going to look like a leaf shape. And put it back the way it was. And in this case you have bulky seam allowances kind of on both ends, so it really doesn't matter how it feeds through the machine. I'm just going to make sure that those are nicely aligned and stitch on down. So now I'm going to return these pieces back to where they are, and as you can see, I actually have it opposite. These are supposed to go, let's see here, like this instead. So it's really easy to make a mistake and kind of get it flipped backwards and stuff. So just double check your diagrams and make sure it ends up exactly the way you want it. From here, very simple piecing. You're just going to piece the center stem to a leaf and then to this background rectangle. You're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Piece it all together, and here's what it looks like whenever you finish your center stem. The next step of this block is to piece the flower, and this is super simple piecing. You're first going to prepare your half square triangles, and you're going to piece 4 of them together in this pattern, and then 2 on either side of your center rectangle. Once you get all of that pieced up, piece the 2 rows together, matching those seams, and here's what it looks like whenever you finish the patchwork tulip flower. The next step is to start laying out your pieces in your pieced units to get the block together. And what we're going to do first is piece this background rectangle to the top of the flower, and then piece the flower to the stem. And one thing to note, these seam lines in the stem and in the flower are not going to line up. So just keep that in mind. So all of those things together. Then you're going to take 2 side rectangles and you're going to line them up and piece them to both sides. The last unit to add is your vase along the bottom, and again, these seams in the vase and the seams in the stem are not going to line up. So that's really kind of nice, because then you don't have to worry quite so much about it being absolutely perfect. You're not going to lop off any points. You're not going to blunt any corners. It's always going to work out just exactly right. So once you get the center of your block pieced together, attach the borders, and here's what it looks like whenever you finish your patchwork tulip block. So that's it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed learning how to piece this patchwork tulip quilt block with me today. If you have any questions about this process, definitely ask in the comments below. I'm here to help you learn more about making beautiful quilt blocks. And if you like this video, please share it with your friends and subscribe to our channel on YouTube so you don't miss the next video coming out next week as we learn how to quilt this block with many beautiful designs. Until next time, let's go quilt.